I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. Before I was vlogging, I was blogging, mostly about books. Again, kind of thing I've read throughout my life. And now I am revisiting some of the books, reading my original review of them and seeing if I am going to change my mind on the book in question. The next book on this list is The Saga of Gosta Berling by Selma Lagerlöf. Selma Lagerlöf is the first female author who won the Nobel Prize of Literature. She is Swedish, and it was quite controversial. It was quite controversial, the fact that she took so long as she did before she won a Nobel Prize of Literature, because she was so famous and such a staple of Swedish literature. The saga of Gosta Berling is about Ekeby, which was, I don't really know how to explain it in English, but it was sort of a farmstead, but not focusing so much on the farm part. And Gosta Berling is a former priest who is no longer a priest. He's not allowed to be a priest, and is sort of taken in by the people at Ekeby, saving his life in the process. And then shenanigans happen. So I'm now going to read my original review. For the longest time, when reading this book, I was referring to it as the saga of the lovelorn woman. Gosta is in it, twiddling away in the background, but he's not really that important. Gosta Berling is a priest in the countryside, and he is not happy, nor are anyone happy with him. So much so that the bishop has come to see why Berling is doing such a poor job. When the bishop is in church, Berling is overtaken by a sensation, and his feeling is calling coming back to him. I was clearly not able to write well at this time, but he feels his calling coming back to him. He again understands why he chose to be a priest, even when he has landed in such a small place. He swears to take a new lease on life. When the bishop is going to leave, an old drinking buddy of Berling takes control over the horses, part in fun and part as revenge for Berling wanting to change. The man runs the cart on a wild chase. So, for people not really understanding what is going on here, because I clearly couldn't write or couldn't check my own writing at this time, Berling is drinking. He is not happy with being a priest, and he's doing a bad job. So the bishop, which is his boss, comes to check on him, and Berling wants to really show him how bad of the calling is. He's not interested in being a priest anymore. But when he is in church and the bishop is watching him, he feels his calling coming back to him. He understands why he became a priest, remembers it in a way, and decides to change and become the priest he wanted to be when he first was ordained. And one of his former drinking buddies, in anger for Berling wanting to change and wanting to become a sort of a good man, takes the reins of the cart they are all riding in and driving it off the wall or off the road. When Berling has heard what his friend has done, he is convinced that the bishop will accuse Berling for being the mastermind, and angry that his newfound conviction was such rewarded, he leaves the parish and the priesthood. Shortly after, Berling is found in the snow, nearly dead, and is taken into the warmth of the mistress of Ekeby, the major's wife. He becomes one of the pensioners, one of the people living for free under the protection of the major's wife. The story is about what happens at Ekeby during a year after a certain incident happens. When I say that Berling is just there in the background, I mean that while he is at Ekeby and has a prominent status there, it's not just or very much about him. It depends a bit on how you view the story. Personally, I think the love story about the lovelorn woman that fill up the runtime for half of the book and pop up during the last half is a much more interesting aspect of the book. There is a discussion whether Selma Lagerlöf was queer. She never married, but she had two very close female friends. Now, this in and of itself shouldn't matter, since the term bosom body, point if you get the reference, isn't new regarding women. But when I read about these two women acted towards one another, I start to think that there might be something about the rumor. And what I am referring to here, because again, I clearly couldn't write at this time, is that Selma Lagerlöf had two bosom buddies, and these two bosom buddies were very much at odds with one another, and they were constantly fighting one another. Almost like both of them was in love with Selma Lagerlöf and was angry that there was someone else in the triangle. This did influence the way I read the book. I don't think you can read queer in a book just because the author might have been queer, but there is something fascinating about the way women's love is described in the book. First and foremost, how women are constantly punished for being in love, since this is often someone else than her parents want her to be in love with. It's also often connected with sin. Goodbye, Gosta. My love will not tempt you to sin. Quote from a book. Now, all of the love stories are heterosexual, and quite a few of them do involve Gosta battling. This shows one of the difficulties of trying to read queer into a story, especially one like this, because more than one group has struggled with the same issue. Women, both queer and heterosexual, have at times been refused to follow their heart. If they could, brilliant, but their heart was low on the priority ladder. Shame have, unfortunately, been used to keep women in check and making them do what the people in power wanted them to do, using things like God and moral to forcing through their will. It was shame to love him, shame to be loved by him, a shame worse than death. Quote the book. Despite this, after hearing about how the two women were fighting over Selma Lagerlöf and reading about how she writes about female love as something that is shamed and seen as wrong, though not actually being wrong, I'm on the she was probably queer train. Even taking out the maybe queer aspect, this is a very fascinating book, showing how one action can have ripple effects in a small community. Norway is right next to Sweden, as we get a lot of the same weather. I loved how she managed to describe how darkness and winter can mess with your head. The magical realism, which you don't know if is magical realism, or just nature messing with you. Trust me, that happens when you are out and it's pitch black, you're up to your knees in snow, it starts to blow and snow almost to a storm, and suddenly the world around you is filled with creatures. You have no idea if they're real or not. So that was my review with a few explanations, because this was not a very well-written review. But again, my thoughts haven't really changed in regarding to this book, revisiting it. I still think that there is a lot to say for Selma Lagerlöf, and having a queer reading for her literature, that there absolutely is a possibility for that. And also that, or maybe partly because Selma Lagerlöf never seems to be interested in the main characters of her own books. They're never the ones that are interesting. It's always the side characters. But then again, a lot of authors are like that. But I can absolutely recommend, if you are interested in something that might be queer, to check her out. And let me know what you think when you do. And thank you for listening to me screaming into the void.